You're on Vision Christian Radio. It's Neil with you, the Thursday edition of 2020. Shortly, we will open our talkback lines. You might like to engage with our special guests today as we talk about marriage, as we talk about family. You know, it's no secret that many Aussies are navigating some significant storms and pressures on marriage and family. Marriages and families are under threat, perhaps like never before. And even Christian couples are struggling to hold things together, living out the vows they professed before God, family and friends on their wedding day. Christians realise that the Bible continues to shine light onto marriage that God himself ordained when he made both man and woman in his image at the very beginning. Two very special guests who were married to each other by the age of 18, and they've navigated the storms and pressures of a married life. They've now been married for 47 years. Nicky and Sila Lee are the family life pastors at Holy Trinity Brompton, London in the UK. They've authored numerous books, including the marriage book and the parenting book. They are the developers of Alpha courses, including the marriage course, the pre-marriage course and other relationship courses. Their courses have reached millions of people in more than 120 countries and over 40 languages. It's our absolute pleasure to welcome, first of all, Sila, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And Nicky, welcome to you.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
And we're just talking, just as we got underway there, last time we spoke was I think it was 2012. So we're talking 11 years ago. You just reminded me, you think that I said straight after you'd got off the plane, how do you like Australia? So if I ask you all these years later, now that you've had some more experiences, let me start with you, Nicky. How do you like Australia?
Well, we have been here a little bit longer this time. We've been here for 24 hours. And it is great to be back. We had such a good time last time we were here.
And you're here for a fairly extensive tour, just arrived, and looking forward to, I'll give the dates that listeners will be able to lock in with some of the tour dates. You're here for quite a while and doing a little bit of touring around. I hope there's a bit of time for sightseeing in there, Sila.
Oh, there certainly is. And we're going to 4 cities. We're here in Brisbane, which is beautiful to start with. And then we go to Adelaide, and then to Melbourne, and then to Sydney. And that is so exciting to go to all those different cities. And we look forward to the events that we're going to be doing there.
I suspect there'll be some listeners to our conversation today who will not want to miss the opportunity to see the two of you in the flesh and hear from your heart. No doubt there's some Q&A and all sorts of things that happen when you're making a presentation. You know what I'm moved by, Nicky? 99% of people surveyed say the course that you lead, or the courses, have had a positive impact on their relationship. This is a pretty good response, isn't it? And I guess you're getting good compliments all the time. Maybe there's an occasional criticism, but a lot of people very, very impressed with this marriage course that you run.
And I think one of the reasons for that is that the right at the heart of these courses is giving couples time together. All of the conversations that couples have are entirely private on the courses. So there's no group work on the pre-marriage course or the marriage course. And so the couples are spending time talking with each other around topics that we introduce, communication, resolving conflict, forgiveness, and so on, and finding out things about each other. Sometimes they've been married for decades, had never talked about before.
And this thought that you can keep things to yourself and no one's going to be probing you for a lot of confessions. I know one reviewer said of your courses, there's no counselling, no airing dirty linen in public, no group therapy, and it seems to work. Sila, did you come across this by accident, or you just said, okay, I know people are sensitive about issues that are going on in their marriage?
Yeah, well, I mean, we come from the UK, and I can honestly tell you that 95% of the couples who come on our courses would not come if there was any group discussion about their own relationship, because I think many people would not be honest and open up to what's really going on inside if it meant doing that with other people. And I think we actually knew that right from the beginning because of our own experience. We ourselves didn't have any marriage preparation before we got married. And so that was interesting. And we had quite an interesting first year or so. And it was only after about a year and a half, we went for a weekend with an older, wiser couple, and they'd invited 2 or 3 other couples to come just to talk about marriage and some very practical stuff. But they were the ones that modeled this private discussion for us. So each of us as couples were able, in private, they would do some kind of talking about few practical things, and then they got us to discuss. And that was so impactful for Nicky and me.
Isn't this one of the things that you might actually teach a married couple, that you need to keep some of the issues of your relationship very private? You don't share those with everybody. So the thought that you might come to a group where you're discussing marriage and be asked to actually air the dirty laundry, that wouldn't actually make common sense, would it?
No, absolutely. And of course, the wonderful thing about the commitment and the vows we make in marriage is that it becomes this safe place where we are able to be open with another person because they've committed themselves to love us and to be faithful to us, and we can feel safe. And the thing about that kind of vulnerability and openness, it builds trust. And that is at the heart and the foundation of a strong marriage relationship.
A safe place as we are married, a safe place before God, Nicky, two becoming one flesh. Safety in that idea and biblical principles around these sorts of things. And I know your course is savoured with these biblical principles. Yeah. And but, I wonder whether you come across people who have no idea about these sorts of biblical principles actually growing and helping their marriage to flourish.
We have up to half of all the couples who come on our courses are not churchgoers, wouldn't necessarily call themselves Christians, but they discover these biblical principles because the courses are very practical. They feel very comfortable, they don't feel judged, and I think one of the things about the courses, it helps them to see that actually Christianity is very practical in terms of how we live these things out, not least in a marriage. And can I just add to what Sila said about the safety? Because, as she said, the commitment provides the safety in a marriage. And I think on the courses, we are providing a sort of safe environment within which couples can talk about things they may not either have thought of talking about at home or may not feel quite confident to talk about at home. But because they're doing it in a place where there's a limited time for these conversations, and if they're doing it in person, they can do the course online, but if they're doing it in person, they've got other couples around. This provides a sort of safe environment to talk through what can be quite sensitive issues.
And because God is in the mix, those principles that you're gleaning from the Bible, how to love, how to function, as you say, in a very practical way in marriage, some ways without God in the relationship, some of those practical things can't work, can they?
And I think particularly forgiveness. Right at the heart of the course, the marriage course is 7 sessions. The session 4 is the power of forgiveness. And that sense, and we talk about it, the fact of knowing that we are forgiven and experiencing God's forgiveness, then helps us enormously to forgive each other for much smaller things that our partner has done to us than we've had to ask forgiveness for.
Sila, when you've got people coming along to your courses, and not only the ones that you've run in the UK, but you're getting feedback all over the world, are people coming because they are facing a crisis, or are they coming because they need some level of enrichment? If you're giving some percentages, and you might not have all the exact percentages, but, are we actually a lot heavier on the crisis side than on the enrichment side?
Oh, good question. I don't think we don't have the data on that as to what it would be. And interestingly, we have an absolute cross-section right across the board of different stages, seasons, whether people are in a great relationship and they're there to invest, or whether they're struggling. And we even have couples who have actually separated, who come on the course as a kind of last resort to see if they can get back together. And we know of many couples who that's been the situation. Obviously not every couple, but many, many couples. And I think we developed the course back in 1996 originally for couples in the first 5 years of marriage, because we did the pre-marriage course first. And then we realized after a few years, we need to get these couples back for a kind of like refresher pretty soon. And all the research says that the early years of a marriage are the critical years for putting in the foundations and the habits and having the tools to make a relationship last a lifetime. So we developed the course really for the first 5 years, couples in the first 5 years. And literally by the second course, we had couples married 10 years, 20, 40 years. And the kind of response we were getting from these couples was that they were all benefiting in one way or another, whether they were there with a great marriage to invest or whether they were really struggling.
Good to do this while you are young, either intending marriage or in those early years of marriage, so you can get foundations. But what I'm hearing from you here is that when you do a marriage course, don't think of it as a one-off, now she'll be right, but you need to make a plan, and maybe it's different for everyone, but making a plan so that you can revisit a marriage course from time to time, just to top up and reinvest in those things that you've committed together.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we never get it sorted. You know, we always need to be... I hesitate to use the word working on our marriage, because I don't think it is work in that sense. I think it's investing is a much better word, because we all know investment is a good thing. And what we are doing is really investing time, investing our emotions, investing everything in us in the most important relationship in our life. And that will always continue to be the case. If we invest, we will reap the blessings of that. If you take it for granted and think, okay, I've done a marriage course, I've done something for my marriage, and then that's it for the rest of my life, we'll stay the same. That's you're deluded, because actually we're changing all the time. And I remember hearing a woman who was married for over 50 years saying she'd been through 25 different marriages, but all to the same man.
That one's worthy of taking a few moments to think through. Just before we take any calls, let me ask you this, Sila. Of course, there's a difference between the Alpha course, but you're a part of the Holy Trinity Church in Brompton, and so that's where the Alpha course emerges from. You and Nicky, you've pioneered the marriage course. It's not called the Alpha marriage course, but that's what everybody seems to refer to it as.
Absolutely. It absolutely. These two courses, or three actually, because we do pre-marriage, the pre-marriage course and the marriage course we developed at our church in London. They both grew out of the local church and the need really in our local church for a place where people could explore the Christian faith, which is Alpha, and explore the bigger questions of life. And that is one of course. And then we also were responding to the need for relationship support for both pre-marriage, for couples who are engaged to be married, or actually exploring marriage, not yet engaged, but wanting to explore marriage. And then, as a result of running that for a number of years, we saw a great need for a follow-on course, and so we developed the marriage course. So those two, the pre-marriage and the marriage, are for couples to focus on their relationship, either prior to marriage or once they are married. Or actually, we welcome cohabiting couples on the marriage course who've been married and been together for a number of years.
And of course, the Alpha course is so well known. It has been so successful around the whole world. A lot of people know the Alpha course. Interesting, does the Alpha course feed off the marriage course, or does the marriage course feed off the Alpha course? In one sense here, some people might be fearful of actually putting themselves into an alpha course and being exposed to Christian understanding of things. How do they work interactively?
Well, that is our experience in our church, and they've always run together side by side, and people go in both directions. You know, there are some people who, well, I think all of us recognize we want help to make our relationships work, and that's their felt need. That's what they really relate to. And so when they hear about a pre-marriage or a marriage course, that's their go-to. And it's a very, it's a great opportunity for people to come into the church who, may not otherwise come into the church. But there are other people who have some really big questions about life and about faith, and they are really open to a place and a space, which is what Alpha provides, where they can discuss with others anything they want, and in a very unthreatening environment. It's not like you're coming into you're making a commitment to coming to a church and all of that. You come into a space run by the church, by Christians, to give you the opportunity to discuss anything that you feel. And that's an amazing environment. And so people, wherever they're at, there is this place that they can go to pursue whatever it is that they're looking for.
We are taking calls, 1-800-316-316. You might like to join in our conversation, a question, a comment. You might have your own experience doing a marriage course. Let's take a call from Kirsty. Hi, Kirsty. Welcome along.
Hi there. I have a testimony.
Oh, wonderful.
I did the marriage course about 11 years ago, and it saved my life and my marriage.
Now, that's interesting. Just to pick up on them, before you go any further, it saved your life and your marriage, because there's real pressure on you when marriages are falling to pieces. Keep going, Kirsty.
Yeah, so I had been married for 3 years and we had one child, and we had a very traumatic birth, and we were trying to deal with all the fallout of that. And I was reading a book about birth trauma, which was a secular book, and it actually mentioned the marriage course, and it said, if you ever get the opportunity in preparing to have other children and moving past the trauma, do the marriage course. And I thought, if this book, which does not speak about God in any way, and it doesn't seem that authors or even Christian are recommending the marriage course, I should probably do it. And our church actually started running one a couple of weeks after I read that in the book. And we took the marriage course, and we also found out we were pregnant at the same time. And as the marriage course was drawing to an end, we found out that we'd actually lost that baby. But we were put in such a position. God used that to make us communicate with each other, heal wounds, forgive, deal with stuff, that we were in a position where it didn't sink us. I think if we hadn't done the marriage course, it would have sunk us. And I, in the lead up to the marriage course, was dealing with such anxiety and pain from everything that I'd already been going through, that God just allowed himself to work through the material with us and got us to a place where we could weather that storm with him. And then we went on to have twins, so we definitely needed to have him walking with us through that, and we are celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary in December.
Some people might say having the twins is a bigger crisis as well, but wonderful to hear, Kirsty. Let's get a thought or two. Sila, when you're hearing this sort of testimony,
yes.
I mean, there's ups and downs in all of that. What are your thoughts here for Kirsty?
Oh, Kirsty, that's a really amazing story, and we're just so thrilled to hear that about you and your husband. And I think one of the most amazing things you said is about how in the midst of the trauma and then the shock of losing another pregnancy was that you were able to communicate with one another. Because when we're dealing with trauma and pain at a deep emotional level, it's so easy to process that just individually and to become isolated. And what you describe is exactly what we hope for and long for on the marriage course, which is that couples learn ways and tools and skills to be able to communicate with each other through the really challenging times. And it's just a beautiful story to hear you describe it. You just described it so perfectly. And we're just thrilled and excited about you having twins. Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Kirsty, while we've got you here, how many years is it now that you've been married?
15, coming this December.
You did the marriage course. You had been married 3 years. You had one child, and then the crisis came, losing the baby. You know, when you have a testimony like that and you've gone on 15 years, have you done any sort of supplementary marriage courses in since then? I mean, is this something, as we've been talking about, maybe you do one early and then you make a bit of a time to, you know, to get a plan in place and do some more of these? Have you done any more since?
We actually have encouraged a lot of other people to do the marriage course, and as we've been encouraging them, we've kind of gone back and said, well, look, this is the content that they cover, and it gets updated regularly. We're aware of that. And so you'll be getting something even better when you go along and do it. And it was actually something that I was thinking about going on a refresher, because in the churches that have run it around us, you also get a date night. You get to have dinner, and sometimes your children get looked after. It's amazing.
Sounds like you're a part of a great group there. Nicky, when you hear this sort of testimony, it's the best endorsement, but your thoughts here for Kirsty?
Oh, Kirsty, it was worth coming all the way to Australia just to hear that testimony. If we went home now, we'd say it was worth coming. Thank you so much. And you know, one thing that is fascinating to us is that couples come just like you, doing the marriage course, say 2-3 years into their marriage. And then sometimes many couples come back again when they reach a new stage, a new season, perhaps when they have children or they have teenagers. And so often couples have said to us, goodness, this is a completely different course. It's not a different course. They're just having different conversations now. So couples often do redo the marriage course about every 5 years or so in their marriage.
And I love, Kirsty, that you said about it being like a date night, and the 7 date nights, and even having your kids looked after. And actually, that's something that we hear again and again, that for people, it becomes a culture. It becomes a lifelong habit of having date nights. And that's one of the spin-offs that we hope come from investing 7 consecutive weekly sessions in coming on the marriage course, that then couples continue to have date nights, have fun together. And that is probably the single most amazing thing to kind of continue to do after the marriage course.
Kirsty, thank you so much for your call and sharing your story. Appreciate you calling through, and our talkback line is open on 1800 316 316. To join into our conversation today, our special guests are Nicky and Sila Lee. They are the developers of the marriage course, the pre-marriage course. There's a number of other relationship courses too. At 1800 316 316. We're going to break for news in just a few moments. Just before we do, though, it's churches typically that are running these marriage courses. When you've got the sort of support base that goes on, allowing the couples to go on a date night and getting kids looked after in an appropriate setting. Is this happening regularly?
This is what we love to hear. And Kirsty talking about churches around her running the marriage course, offering it to people. Obviously, in the church, we need to support the marriages of Christian couples, but opening it up to their community. There are so many people around who are looking for help, who want something like this, and it can make a life-changing difference to them, like it has to Kirsty and her husband.
1800 316 316 if you'd like to join into our conversation. And Nicky, let me come to you here, because there was a major earthquake to relationships that happened within our recent memory, and that, of course, is COVID. Did that upset a lot of marriages and relationships, put people under a huge amount of pressure, and do you think people have recovered yet?
Well, I think you put it mildly to say it was under every marriage. No, not every marriage, but many relationships, many marriages were under great pressure from being locked down, being forced just to be in the same space 24/7. And it occurred, lockdown happened just after we had released the new films. We'd refilmed the marriage and pre-marriage courses, and we were expecting these to be launched lots of places around the world. And suddenly we couldn't launch them anywhere or even run them in London. And so we made the decision to put them online. And thousands of couples started to do it online. And the feedback we've been getting has been amazing. Many couples have said doing the course during lockdown actually saved their relationship, saved their marriage. And so the huge shock, which continues, whether couples have recovered today, I couldn't answer for them. What I do know, though, is that so many marriages are under pressure. And doing something like the marriage course, where you take time out, as it were, time out from your sort of normal routine to have these 7 evenings just to talk together as a couple, can make all the difference in the world.
From memory, talking about the Alpha course, it had always been a policy never to have the Alpha course online until COVID came. Because of this thought of being face-to-face, there's a certain personal way, an intimate way of relating. But when you did go online with the Alpha course and, of course, with the marriage course, you discovered that people were quite intimate, even in the online environment.
Yes, and we were hesitant. We didn't know if it would work, couples doing it on their own, in their own home, because if those who were listening earlier in the program, we talked about the marriage course creating this safe environment where they're having private discussions, but there are others around them. So that imposes a restraint, let's say, on their conversation. But what we have seen and heard is that more couples are able to do it because they don't have the problems of childcare or perhaps work commitments and other things. They can do it at home themselves, perhaps in their own time, and that has allowed couples to do it. We do say to them, though, if you do it on your own, again, make it a special evening. They may do it during the day, but let's say in the evening. Make it like a date night. Have candles, have something nice to eat and so on. And if the conversation starts to get out of hand, take a break. Go and make a cup of tea, whatever it is, just to defuse things, come back to the conversation later.
1-800-316-316 to join in our conversation today. Let's take another call. Bruce is in Maruya in New South Wales. Hey, Bruce, welcome along.
Oh, thank you very much.
What are your thoughts, Bruce?
I've been involved in marriage counselling for about 40 years, and I've created a course with myself, and I use Peacewise otherwise, or Prepare and Enrich, sorry. But when I created the course with couples, I actually took it in a home where couples could go off into separate rooms and talk. They had half an hour to talk through issues, but they could call myself in to help them through issues. And then when we came back, we never aired anything that was personal in the meeting, but we talked about the general issues. So what do you think about that?
Bruce, really good thoughts there. Let me come to Sila. Different methods, ways of, even getting to the nitty-gritty of some issues that couples are facing. What are your thoughts for Bruce?
Yeah, Bruce, that sounds absolutely wonderful. That's amazing that you've been supporting couples in that way for so long. And I mean, I think your method sounds absolutely fantastic. And Prepare Enrich, I know, is a wonderful program. And, many thousands of couples have been strengthened and helped through that. And I think the other thing we want to say is that it's, we really, really appreciate people like yourself who are couple counsellors and couple therapists, professionals, who we would always signpost a number of couples who've done the marriage course to people for one-to-one therapy or counselling who have a particular need. And I'm thinking of, really quite challenging situations like where there's an addiction or there's a mental health issue or there's an anger problem that's out of control. So there are many different methods and ways of supporting and helping couples. And I just love that what you've been doing, and I love it that it's in a home, and I love that the couples have both the combination of the intimate between the two of them, but then the kind of coming back and the general principle. So thanks for sharing that.
Bruce, a special honour to you. I think you said you'd been doing this for 40 years. Is that what you said?
About that, yes.
Well, Bruce, special honour to you, and may the next 10 or 20 years be even better than the first 40. So wonderful to hear from you. Thank you so much for your call, Bruce. Our talkback line open on 1-800 316 316. You might have your own thoughts on marriage courses. You might have a challenge that you're going through right now, and you're looking for a little bit of insight and how perhaps they might approach it. Our special guests, Nicky and Sila. Let me come to another really big issue that's, it's sort of a new thing. It's changing all the time. People on social media, and I hear that, addictions to your mobile device or internet addictions and all sorts of things like this are having impact on relationships. Nicky, your thoughts here about the changing environment that we find ourselves in when it comes to running a relationship.
It's so interesting, isn't it, that we can communicate now with more and more people, faster and faster speed, further and further apart. And yet the relationship, the communication we can find the hardest is with the person who is closest to us. And that's why we always recommend, whether the couple are actually doing the marriage course itself or having a date night or just quality time together, they put their phones away. Because as you said, it can be addictive, but also if it's constantly attracting our attention, the message it's sending to our husband or wife is, the people I'm communicating with in my phone are more important than you are. And I remember one couple whose marriage was just about over, coming on the marriage course. And she said after session 2, which is when we do it on communication, they were going home in the taxi. She said her husband, rather than taking his phone out as he usually would, scrolling through, answering messages, he didn't. It stayed in his pocket, and he turned to his wife and said, "How was this evening for you?" And she knew something had changed. And their marriage was recovered, and now that couple makes sure that they have special time where their phones don't interfere with their communication.
Are there some special hints that occur when you do a marriage course that like that different response? Maybe you've reacted this way. Here's a better way to communicate. I mean, obviously communicating is going to be one of those things you talk about. Do you help people just to get their language just a little bit more fine-tuned so that they're not pushing all the buttons that cause the tensions? Is this the sort of thing that comes out in the conversations?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that the Bible places such a strong emphasis on listening. We so often think about how do we express ourselves, how do we talk, and so on. And we certainly talk about talking, how do we talk at the level of our feelings. But at the end of the day, it is probably the listening that makes the biggest difference. And as James says in his letter, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. And so on that session on communication, we help couples to have a conversation where one of them brings up something that they're concerned about or anxious about, and the other partner's role is simply to reflect back what they've heard, not to give a comment, not to judge it, not to say it doesn't matter or do this or do that, but just to show that they've understood their partner. And of all the things on the course, I don't know if anything else makes as much difference as that, just the simple act of listening and understanding and showing that you've understood your partner.
Interesting, Sila, I'll get your thoughts here, because if you're going through some challenging times in your marriage, let's call it the storm.
Yeah.
There's a storm that you're facing, and perhaps storm is a really good illustration because storms pass. But if you're going through that storm, sometimes you don't know what questions even to ask. When you're in a group and you've got a facilitator, a leader, someone who's helping you to address some of those issues, how important is that there's someone there asking a question you might not have considered that you should ask, or maybe you're afraid to ask?
Well, that's very interesting that you say that. I mean, as I said earlier, having a third party counsellor may well be absolutely what a couple needs. But our experience with the marriage course is that it's a bit like, I mean, if you use the analogy of a yacht, and, you know, if a yacht capsizes, there are sort of self-righting mechanisms, as it were, and it can come up and go sailing off again on its own. And what we have observed on the marriage course is that couples do that. If they are in a storm, and often the first couple of sessions of the marriage course can look pretty tough for couples. They are not communicating well. They're not really engaging with one another, but they are going through because they're committed to sorting things out. And we see the body language as they start to open up to one another. And there may be deep hurt, and that, you know, that is really tough and challenging. But gradually, what we are doing is giving them the tools to enable to reach out and say something that they wouldn't otherwise know how to say in the way that they're saying it, and asking the right questions.
And it is actually giving them a series of questions to ask each other, which can be the key. So on that, on the conversation that I was referring to on the communication session, so it's asking your partner, is there something that you'd like to talk about, something you're anxious about? Then
or upset about. It's not just about anxiety. I mean, where someone's feeling really hurt, really betrayed, really upset, their partner may not have a clue what it is that they've done. And that's where the communication comes. So that question Nicky's just said enables that person in a safe environment to say, well, when you told me you were going to be home for dinner and actually you arrived 2 hours late and you didn't send a message, I was really upset by that. And then, you know, it's very easy for the other to jump to the conclusion, oh, but you had no idea that, you know, I was at work, this thing was going on, I couldn't get to the phone, and you jump to your defense. But actually, on the communication thing, listening and reflecting back, so you go, oh, so when I didn't contact you and I was 2 hours late, that really upset you. And then the person can then say, yeah, and you know, go on about it and help the other person to understand what it makes them feel.
So couples dealing with the issue of offence, so easy to be offended, so easy to say the wrong thing and be offensive. There's a certain sense in which I guess you've got to help couples to establish what it is that causes you to be offended and how to, you know, cool, douse the flames of all the fiery stuff that comes around that, and vice versa. Thoughts here, Nicky, on dealing with offence?
I think, as Sila said, it's when you have the opportunity to say where you've been hurt and know that you have been understood in that. Then, when the other person understands, then they're able to apologise. So often, we don't apologise either because we don't know at all that we've hurt our husband or wife, or we haven't really understood the depth of it. Once we understand that, then we can apologise, and then the other person can forgive.
And I think some people listening might be thinking, oh, yeah, but you don't know me or you don't know my husband or wife. I mean, there's just an explosion. And, you know, it's like being kind of hit by a tornado. I mean, what do you do then? Or another person might be saying, oh, but I have no idea at all what they are feeling, my partner, whether it's he or she. I mean, there's no emotion. There's nothing. It's just like deadpan. And that's something we talk about. How do we, and self-awareness is a big part of the marriage course experience, becoming more self-aware. Oh, so this is how I am. This is how I react to my partner. Is that really helpful? And I mean, speaking personally, we talk about it, those two extreme reactions. the rhino and the hedgehog, two animals really to kind of describe the kind of hiding of emotion or the explosion of emotion. And I am very much on the rhino end of the spectrum.
And I'm on the hedgehog end of the spectrum.
Okay, all right, yes.
So you can see we're an interesting mix. And
I sometimes feel like the tornado bit. So
the rhino charges
Yes.
the
Yes.
hedgehog, and let's use our Australian illustration of an echidna. Where the echidna is a spiny little
Like a
creature.
porcupine?
And yes,
Okay.
something similar.
Okay.
So it might roll itself up into a little ball too and expose its spikes to an enemy.
Yes.
So you've got this illustration, and I know that these are important illustrations when we talk about animals, rhinos and echidnas. This is powerful, isn't it?
It sure is. And I've certainly been on a very big learning curve because neither of those two expressions of hurt and when we get angry and upset are really very helpful. And we have to learn a different way. And really the way is to verbally express in a pleasant way actually what we're feeling. And I've really had to learn that. I didn't see it modelled in my own parents. There was an awful lot of slamming doors and shouting and that stuff. And I didn't see, a kind of sitting down and identifying what the issue is. Okay, it was the fact that you are continually coming back late and you're not, whatever. I'm just using that as an example. And it's not what Nicky does. I hasten to add, that's not one of his issues.
No.
But if it was continuing, ongoing, the same thing again and again, you identify, you talk about it in a pleasant way, not shouting at each other or simply blanking the other. And then where you've made a mistake, you own it and say, I'm so sorry. I will try not to do that again, learn from it. So it's me changing my behaviour and then also the forgiveness. I forgive you.
Can you turn the heat down just by being more gentle in your communication? I mean, sometimes we say communication is about the things you say. If you're the rhino, Sila, you've got to learn how to turn that down. So
absolutely.
A certain level of gentleness
Yes.
may actually enable
Yes.
a problem to resolve. If you're not gentle at all, you're instantly in an argument.
Yeah, and I think in the past I tried to sort of minimise anything that was sort of upsetting, saying it's going to be all right. I wanted to keep everything calm and peaceful. And it was only when I realised, gosh, I need to allow Sila to speak. I need to allow her to say what she's upset about, that actually she calmed down and could talk about where she was hurt.
Well, also, I had to learn not to shout at Nicky and sort of get so passionate. He was like, I'm out of here.
And curl up in a ball.
Curl up in a ball. I had
Stick
to
my prickles out to keep her as far away as I could.
I had to learn to talk in a more calm fashion. And sometimes, in learning that, I had to literally go out of the room and take, 20 good deep breaths, walk around the room twice, and then come back in and say, what I am feeling is this, and talking using I rather than you, and accusing and blaming, saying, I am feeling very upset that you don't seem to understand what I'm talking about.
Well, you've both been married a very long time, and there's a lot of wisdom that has gone into the courses that you have developed. Not only have these courses been accessed by millions around the world, and no doubt you've fine-tuned some things along the way and keep on making them even better. Let me just ask you about the sort of people who ought to do this. We talked about, people who are young in their relationship. We talked about the thought there's ongoing enrichment that you can do by doing a marriage course. People coming back from the brink. Do you get many who are coming to do these courses? This is a last gasp. If we don't get something worked out right now, this is the end. Sila,
Yes.
This is the sort of thing that no matter where you are on that spectrum,
Yes.
get into a marriage course.
Yes. And we were absolutely amazed, honestly, because we hadn't anticipated that. But as I said, we started to get couples coming from every different situation and, some of them would be in that kind of crisis thing. And I mean, I could give you many examples, but one was a couple who been married for 3.5 years. They had a 1-year-old daughter, and they had been separated for 9 months. And I think they were just on the brink of kind of, he was going to file for divorce, and that was it, over. And she somehow saw an advertisement for the marriage course. And as a last resort, she asked him if he would come with her to that, not thinking he would say yes. He came. And he said he was very reluctant. First evening, he thought, what am I doing here? And that, he didn't have any hope, really, for the future. That marriage was turned around. And again, interestingly, it was session 2 on communication. And he said he did not know how to express his feelings. So he just shut down, basically. And there was no connection between them. That's why they parted. That marriage was totally turned around. They moved back in together during the course. They didn't tell anybody until the end of the course. They then told us their marriage was restored. They went on to have another child. And then we subsequently heard that this couple, well, we know, they moved to the west coast of America. He took up a position as a worship leader in a church there. 5 years ago, we got the most beautiful photograph of this family, the husband, wife, their 2 teenage girls, and they're just planting a church further south in the west coast, and using both Alpha and the marriage course to plant that church, because for them, that was absolutely transformational. And it's the most beautiful story. And that was 2007, they came to do the marriage course, and their marriage was utterly restored.
Well, every marriage will face storms. Getting through the storm may well be something that sets your whole life on a new and bright, flourishing trajectory. Let me let listeners in on how they can access the marriage course. Let me just say, 600 of these courses have been run in Australia this year, and you'll be able to find out where there is a marriage course near you. We did say that you can do these online as well, so if you're in an outback centre and you think, we're way, way, way away from where those marriage courses are being run, well, there'll be a way that you'll be able to link in and be a part of an online course as well. Let me give the website marriagecourse.org.au to find out where a marriage course might be happening near you. And that's something you can share with your spouse or your partner and make a plan to be a part of it. You can also connect with our guests today, Nicky and Sila, not only at marriagecourse.org.au, but also alpha.org.au, and find out how Alpha courses might be very, very powerful in your own church setting as well. There are some tour dates. And, of course, Nicky and Sila, they've just arrived in Australia. This is the beginning of their tour. Tonight they're speaking in Brisbane at Bridgeman Baptist Community Church. They're also preaching there on this coming Sunday. Gold Coast tomorrow, it's lunchtime tomorrow at New Life Church Robina, and they're teaching Bridging Hearts, a discipleship journey. They're going to be in Adelaide on the 17th and 18th at Burnside City Uniting Church. Then they're going on to Melbourne on the 19th and 21st, and in Sydney, 23rd, 25th and 26th of October. You'll be able to check venues on the Alpha website, alpha.org.au. Absolutely outstanding insights from the two of you today. I look forward to the next time we get a chance to talk. Sila, thank you for joining us in the studio.
Oh, thank you. It's been an absolute, fascinating conversation.
Thank you, Neil, very much for having us.